Welcome. This is Deborah Ann Clement, and today's episode of Shortcut to the Soul is actually a listener suggestion, and it is about one of the most hotly debated topics in astrology, otherwise known as which is the best house system. And so I am going to say right at the outset that personally, I don't believe there is a one-size-fits-all house system that is best for everyone. I feel it's more of a preferred system because the truth is that every single system works. But there is one that is going to work better for you. And so that becomes your preferred system, right? So how do you find it? Because there are many house systems to choose from. But for starters, they fall into two categories: equal house systems and unequal house systems. Now, in the equal house systems, all of the houses are the same size. Whole sign system, every house begins at 0, right? In the equal house system, every house begins at the same degree at the ascendant. So again, every house is equal. And also, if you use an equal house system, the midheaven is an entirely separate point, right, in the horoscope, and it usually falls in houses 8, 9, 10, or 11. Not so with the unequal house systems. In that system, right, the midheaven is a 10th house cusp, and of course, the houses are of varying sizes. Now, personally, I feel the horoscopes created in the unequal house system, I do feel very often they are more complex and they do require a bit more analysis. And personally, I feel that I get more information from them. And I'm going to say why. All right. So the unequal house systems, the horoscope is broken up into 4 quadrants, right? And the beginning of each quadrant forms an angle, right? We have the ascendant, the IC, the descendant, the midheaven. But besides, each quadrant really has its own meaning, right? There are 3 houses in each quadrant. One is a cardinal house, one is a succedent house, and one is a cadent house, relating to the cardinal signs, the fixed signs, and the mutable signs. Now, unequal house systems assign different levels of strength to the houses, whether they are cardinal, succedent, right, or cadent. And that's a factor, that can be a factor when interpreting the chart in terms of the emphasis, and again, looking at the strength, if we're looking at elements and modalities, and then we could also be looking at the strength of the houses. Now, unequal house systems, when you use one, well, these charts can also contain interceptions. And that adds a layer of complexity to the chart as well as to its analysis. Because when you're dealing with interceptions, you have duplicated signs, right, on houses. Well, that has its own significance. And then you have the pair of intercepted signs, right, has its own meaning. And then there is the pair of intercepted houses, again, right, its own significance. And last but not least, if there are planets in intercepted signs, well, they have their own meanings. Plus, intercepted planets take on a role as a secondary house ruler. Now, interceptions are not always present in horoscopes, right, created with an unequal house system. However, they are never present in equal house systems. So if you don't value interceptions, you might be more inclined to start with an equal house system. I value the interceptions. I gain tremendous insight into the individual's life experience as well as the soul path. I have an intercepted chart, which is why I became so interested in it years ago. But it's also one of the reasons why I stick with the unequal house system. So how do you choose really the best system for you? Or I'm going to say, right, the preferred system for you. And so I'm going to share with you what I teach my mentoring students in the first class, because I start with house systems. And what I tell them is I encourage them to explore the other house systems, to run their chart, right, in both non-quadrant and quadrant house systems. And by explore, I mean create the chart and, of course, analyze it, really analyze it, go through the entire chart and see the differences, because sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's a little bit more dramatic. It will depend upon the chart. But every chart is going to work. Every house system, I should say, is going to work. And you are going to see themes and patterns in each chart. You're going to gain many of the same insights, though in some cases it may come in a slightly different way. For instance, a talent or ability that you may interpret in your chart you see in a certain place, it shows somewhere else. And just quick example, my chart ruler is Mercury. It is in my 8th house, and I'm just going to look at that in terms of, let's say, intuitive ability, right? There's more to it than that. But the ruler, my chart ruler, which represents me, is in the 8th house. In different house systems, that Mercury gets kicked into the 7th house. Very different, right? It's very different. But my sun gets bumped out of the 9th and into the 8th. And so the sun, right? It's our identity. It's how we shine. And so there it is in that 8th house and in that psychic house. Both, if you look at both planets, if you want to interpret the sun in the 8th house, there is a bit of privacy, right? The sun is in the 8th house, a little bit under the radar. You take the chart ruler, you put it in the 8th house. It's also somebody a little bit stays under the radar. And so that's why I say you will see similar themes and similar insights, similar information. Now, does it make as much sense? See, that's the question, is that as you look at each chart and you interpret it, how well does it fit your life? Okay, sometimes it's not as easy, because sometimes it is a subtle, it's a subtle difference. However, if you have a major shift, and for example, if you have a stellium and that shifts into another house, or half of it shifts into another house, that sometimes can help you see things a little bit more clearly. That was the case for me, because I have a 6th house stellium that in certain house systems got shifted into the 5th house, or broke it up and put it into the 5th house. And I have to tell you, I mean, given a choice, I'd rather have those planets in the 5th house. And while I could relate to some of it, when I was young, I wanted to be an actress. Can I see some creativity? Sure. But honestly, I didn't live that 5th house life or that 5th house experience. I really lived that 6th house life, more connected to, I'm just going to say, the work, the service, and even looking at the placements of the planets. And just, for example, I have a Moon-Jupiter conjunction. And in the 6th house, it just makes much more sense for me, especially 6th house is jobs. And as an employee, I always say this, I can't count how many jobs I've had. I don't remember them all. If you want to talk about fluctuation, and also the Jupiter part of it. And I think of the work I've done, right? Well, I've done teaching, right? I teach. I've done law. I've done counseling. And, I've written, I've published. And so it makes much more sense with the stellium in the 6th house than in the 5th house. And the publishing, by the way, because 5th house is very creative, but the publishing I did, it was legal. All right. There were legal articles. So it wasn't, it's in law. It's not creative, right? When we were writing. So it just made much more sense. So the more dramatic the shift, the easier it is to see the difference. Now, the second thing you can do, and you just want to validate it, or if it's not as clear, is to look at transits. And especially look back. If you have any major events that you can remember, if they're major, you should, right? Maybe a marriage, maybe a relocation, maybe a divorce. Or I will say, especially if you had, unfortunately, a major crisis in your life, right? One involving an outer planet at the time, like Pluto or Uranus or Neptune. take that period of time, take that transit, and apply it to the charts and see how it lines up. See if there's any different insight. There may not be, and then again, there might, but that is another way that you can look to see which really aligns best, for you, and then it will help you choose your preferred chart. So for me, it's Placidus. But, if you can read a chart in one house system, you can read it in any house system, obviously. So I read charts. I read charts for clients with a variety of house systems, equal and unequal. In fact, I have one client that uses the equal house system with a sidereal zodiac. And you know what? It works. Because when it comes to the house systems and in general, there is no right or wrong. It's really just about finding the best system for you, the one that you prefer. So thank you for joining me today. If you have any suggestions for a topic, by all means, please share them with me. I'm Deborah Ann Clement, and until next time, may Jupiter's blessings be your constant companion.
We hope you've enjoyed this presentation. For more information about studying astrology with Deborah or to schedule a consultation, please visit deborahclementastrologer.com.